Reached really the heart of the Shankill at Agnes Street when an old lady in a shawl, they all wore shawls in those days, came running up, and she was in a wild mood, and she shouted, "They're kicking the shite out of the peelers up the falls, and you're going to let them down." I said, "They're kicking the shite out of the peelers up the falls, and you're going to let them down." And of course that really set the whole thing alight.
They got together, both sections of the community, both Protestants and Catholics, and they went on the rampage. They wrecked, they upset Baker's Kirks and took his stuff and gave them to the people.
Windows were bashed in, and there was absolute chaos. Fire engines, places set on fire, and then the police arrived with rifles in an armoured car. And I saw them pursuing these rioters along Agnes Street, and I was amazed when I saw some of these men turning and stopping in the doorways and producing revolvers and firing at the police.
The riots had taken the classical Belfast pattern. Shops were looted and barricades set up. Cobbles were prized in the streets and thrown at the police. But the poor law rates were doubled. As the police patrolled the now quiet streets, the Catholic Church attacked the riots as communist-inspired. The Unionist government put it down to Republican agitation.
And what happened was that the Unionist politicians very quickly moved into the Protestant ghetto areas and manipulated the situation again into a constitutional problem, whereby they were saying to the ordinary Protestant working class people, look, you can't unite with these Catholics because what they're doing is only a front. That the real reasons behind the civil or the labour unrest was quite simply that they wanted to destroy the state of Northern Ireland and take us into United Ireland. And unfortunately, through fear, the Protestant working class believed the stories they were told. And very quickly, the whole movement was divided again. And I think that the Catholic Church itself must bear some of the brunt of it, because they labelled it as a communist front. And so again, you had the two extremes manipulating the two working classes into their way of thinking.
The Orange marches of that summer were particularly fervent. A new Republican government in the south was taking a hostile stance towards the north. Unionist politicians responded with speeches appealing to sectarian prejudice. The Prime Minister, Craig Evans, said,
"It is our duty and privilege to see that we have servants of the most unimpeachable loyalty to King and Constitution in carrying on a Protestant government for a Protestant people."
Sir Basil Brooke, later to be Prime Minister, having said he personally did not employ Catholics, went on,
"Catholics are out to destroy Ulster with all their might and power. They want to nullify the Protestant vote and take all they can out of Ulster and then see it go to hell."
And Senator Sir Joseph Davison, Orange Grand Master of Belfast, said,
"It is our duty to pass the word along from this great demonstration. And I suggest the slogan should be, Protestants employ Protestants."
In working class Belfast, seen here in a rare home movie in the summer of 1935, there was now little accord between the two sections of the community. After the summer marches of the Orange Order, rioting broke out.
I remember that Sunday as well. They came down in droves and droves and droves. Unfortunately for us, those streets were dug up, the cobbles were dug up, they were about the concrete, and there was plenty of ammunition, and then the war started. There were stones thrown.
First thing I seen a mob at the bottom of the street, and then a few people stopped me and said your house was very near burned to the ground, but the Poisonous district saved it the best it could.
There were people burned out in Jennymount Street and Mailwater Street and all down at Athlone area. And the houses burned.
Bombs thrown and people killed, and funerals. It went on endlessly. It reached such a serious stage that the government called in the British Army. The British Army came in and took over, and along York Street in these mixed districts there was barricades erected. It was almost like a shape of things to come nowadays.
Belfast was like a city under martial law, following the worst riots for many years, which left their mark like a scar across the map of Ulster. The trouble arose as a party of Orangemen were returning from Battle of the Boyne celebration.
11 people had been killed. Catholics were expelled from their jobs, and 500 homes, mostly Catholic, were abandoned.
The 1935 rioting had a shattering effect on the Catholic community, I think. They directly blamed the sectarian speeches of the government ministers and the Prime Minister himself in the preceding years for this pogrom against them, and it confirmed for them that they were outsiders in their own country, aliens in their own country. So they felt isolated, vulnerable, and thoroughly demoralized.
These streets had witnessed riots in 1886, the early 20s, and would again in the 1970s. Then, as now, British troops would be needed to assist the police. Gradually, the province returned to normal, but the state was still divided. The minority still vulnerable, the majority still besieged. 1953, a Viking of the Queen's flight. A loyal Ulster welcome for Elizabeth II on her first visit to Northern Ireland as monarch. Dublin had withdrawn the South from the British Commonwealth and declared a republic. But an anxious North had been reassured. Britain, in gratitude for Ulster loyalty in war, had passed the Ireland Act of 1949, guaranteeing that in no event will Northern Ireland, or any part thereof, cease to be part of His Majesty's dominions and of the United Kingdom without the consent of the Parliament of Northern Ireland. This cemented the bond with Britain as powerfully as any unionist could have wanted. But the country remained deeply divided. Social functions were nearly always segregated and held in halls with religious and political connections. Each community read its own newspapers, kept to its own pubs, doctors, chemists and shops. Catholics played hurling and Gaelic football, Protestants rugby and cricket. The two communities kept to themselves. When they did meet for business, at cattle markets for example, there would be no talk of political or religious matters, nor, significantly, of subjects that might lead up to them.
But generally, church activities, social activities, each section of the public confine their activities to them. It is very, very seldom that you'll find, and again I use these words, a Protestant socialising with, say, a Roman Catholic community or Roman Catholic socialising in a Protestant community.
I had quite a number of Protestant friends, which isn't usual, particularly in the cities, for Catholics growing up. But there were the occasions, like the month of July. I mean, the 1st of July, the Union Jacks would go up on the Protestant neighbours' houses. And life changed for that month. The Protestant kids were actively discouraged from playing with us. And their mothers did not, as they did for the rest of the year, congregate in my mother's house for morning tea and chat and gossip. And then once July would be over and the flags would come down, they'd all come sneaking back again. And nobody really passed any remarks. That was the way things were.
Tension always mounted in the month of July, when the Orange Order held its traditional marches. They celebrated the victories which had established the Protestant ascendancy in the 17th century. As they passed by or through Catholic districts, they were seen by Catholics as being unnecessarily provocative assertions of superiority. The Orange Order transcended class. Labourer marched with mill owner in defence of their religion and privilege. The order was committed to instilling the virtues of Protestantism into the minds of its children. Here it had